Can you guys see me, hear me? Is everything okay? I am confused. Anyone? I am so sorry. Oh, yes. Good. Okay. I apologize for this blunder. This is all new for me. It changed the system. I don't know what happened. I apologize. Anyway, I'm here. I'm live. I am Sarah Michel. This is another life challenge to God. Now, as always, during this live stream, I challenge God to provide evidence that He exists, and let's see if during this transmission God is gonna grace us with His omnipotent and benevolent presence and once and for all this atheism discussion, and provide us with empirical evidence that He exists. Now, anyway, let's go to the topic of today. I'm going to talk about the definition of atheism. Now, that is a very controversial topic sometimes because it involves activism and involves politics especially. So this is something important about this discussion of the definition of atheism. It's not simply about semantics, and it's not simply about philosophy. There is a very strong political element to this discussion that makes it sometimes lead to quite heated debates. And one of the most prominent atheists on this discussion is Matt Dillahunty. Now, this is not an attack on Matt. Let me just make that very clear. I like Matt. I respect Matt. Matt is a good inspiration for me to even be doing these streams. I really like him. I have nothing against him at all as a person. I really respect and admire him. But I do have disagreements regarding with not only how he uses the label atheist and agnostic, but how he defines them. And I think he does contradict himself in some of instances. And I'm doing this video as a critique and as a way to stimulate debate and stimulate conversations, and why I think using atheism as the umbrella, atheist as the umbrella term for non-believers or non-theists is incorrect. It's not the best way to do it because it leads to confusion and lack of precision. So let me start from some of what I think are misconceptions that not only Matt himself makes, but many other atheists do. The first misconception I see is regarding the differences between atheism and agnosticism. The claim that atheism is about belief and agnosticism is about knowledge. Matt recognizes that knowledge is a subset of belief. Now, this is an epistemological problem. We cannot claim any knowledge. We cannot claim to have absolute knowledge about anything except the cogito. That is my position. I embrace the Cartesian doubt. I believe that the only thing I have absolute knowledge of is the fact that I, or something that is me, my ego, let's put it like that, exists. That is the only thing I have absolute certainty of, because without it, without an I existing, I cannot generate thought, I cannot process thought, I cannot exist at all. I need to exist in order to experience anything. It's a precondition. So in this sense, I am of the position that the only thing we can know for certainty, with certainty, is that we exist. That is my position, and that is an epistemological position. So anything else that I claim to know, and I have already a stream about knowledge called What It Means to Know Something, is belief, is things that I believe to be true. So when we are talking about these discussions regarding atheism, theism, we are discussing beliefs. So to claim that one is about knowledge and one is about belief is contradictory, and Matt is contradicting himself when he says that, because he fully acknowledges that knowledge is a subset of belief. So we are talking about beliefs here, and Matt knows that, and I don't understand exactly why he has this distinction when he acknowledges that knowledge is a belief claim. A claim of knowledge is a claim of belief. So this distinction doesn't make much sense. And in fact, this is something that Ozzy pointed out in one of his videos, that Matt acknowledges that the expression agnostic atheist doesn't make any sense because of this problem of knowledge being a subset of belief. So there's I don't understand how Matt can defend in that sense that there is this distinction. I really don't understand what is his rationale to make that. And I watched his video about the distinction of atheism and agnosticism. He has a video about that in his atheist debate project, and I think that distinction is not clear to me, and I'm going to talk about that video soon. Theoretically, I don't see the problem. Well, there is a problem when you say they are distinct. A belief, a knowledge claim, agnostic atheist, it becomes redundant when both agnostic and atheist are claims of belief. I have no knowledge of a probable deity. Well, that is the whole point. A claim of knowledge, Jen said that, a claim of knowledge is a claim of belief. Knowledge is a belief. We are only talking about beliefs here. Supreme knowledge, no one has supreme or unquestionable knowledge. We can know for sure. No one knows for sure, theoretically. That is the point. No one knows for sure. A claim of knowledge in that sense is a claim of belief. Now you can be either a Pyrrhonian skeptic and believe that knowledge is absolutely an absurd concept, or in my case, I am a Cartesian skeptic, and I believe that the knowledge of myself, the fact that I exist, is the only knowledge that I can have. So this is not it's a belief, exactly, but it is a belief. That's exactly what theoretically saying. It is a special kind of belief, but it is a belief. So if it is a belief, to make that distinction between belief and knowledge makes no sense, because you are talking about beliefs. So that is the problem that I have with this distinction, and Matt acknowledges that. Matt doesn't agree with the expression agnostic atheist, and Ozzy was very clever to point that out in his video and really pick on it, because that is a discussion that Ozzy has had with Matt quite a few times, and Matt acknowledges that. Matt acknowledges that this distinction doesn't really exist and it's wrong to make it. So, but Matt does make a distinction between soft atheism and hard atheism, positive and negative atheism. Now that is a good distinction. Positive atheism would be the belief that God do not exist. That is the positive atheist claim, which is my claim. I believe that God doesn't exist. Gods don't exist. That is my claim. And the negative atheist would be what is often called lacktheism, is a word that Ozzy himself coined. The people who claim to have a lack of belief in God. It's not that they claim to have a positive belief that God don't exist, but they merely lack a belief, or they merely don't have a belief in God. That would be the soft atheist position. Now, the problem, it's not a problem, but a better way to describe that, position is with the word agnostic. Now that word is quite new in the vernacular. It's in the philosophy vernacular. It's a word that was coined by Professor Thomas Huxley. I believe it was in 1889. I am not sure, but I believe it was 1889, where Thomas Huxley wrote, and I'm going to quote verbatim. He said, the one thing these good people agreed was the one thing in which I differed from them. They were quite sure that they had attained a certain gnosis, that they had successfully solved the problem of existence, while I was quite sure I had not, and had pretty strong conviction that the problem was insoluble. So I took thought and invented what I conceived to be the appropriate title of agnostic. So according to Huxley, agnostic is the position of not having gnosis or knowledge that the question of God is answerable at all. Now, the position of Huxley was close to the position that the proposition is unknowable. It's impossible to have knowledge of the existence of God. So he came with the idea of agnostic as a term to say, I'm not going to claim God exists, and I'm not going to claim God doesn't exist. I will suspend belief in this matter because I think it's impossible to make any sort of claim in this discussion. So that is why, excuse me, that's why Huxley came up with that word. Now, that is the reason. So it is a claim of, it is a talk about belief. Now, I have been talking about belief. I kind of skipped something important here, which is a distinction between an ontological position, or an ontological claim and an epistemological claim. So when we are talking about the proposition, God exists, ontologically, that is either true or false. We can apply Aristotelian logic here, because we are, and you can apply the three absolutes: the law of identity, the law of excluded middle, and the law of non-contradiction. God cannot exist and not exist at the same time. God either exists or God doesn't. But when we are talking about mental states, when we are talking about belief or knowledge about God, then we are not talking about ontology here. We are talking about epistemology. And when we are talking about epistemology, things are a little bit more complex. And I know Steve is on the chat, and I'm going to mention this. Steve had a discussion, more or less, with Matt about this. And Steve, in my opinion, correctly said that other modes of logic, such as fuzzy logic or many what was the other one? Many layer logic. I am not a logician, so I might get confused. Many value logic. I might get confused on the terms. Many value logic and fuzzy logic are better ways of expressing beliefs rather than classical logic, or especially Aristotelian logic. And even though I am not a logician, I do understand that Aristotelian logic especially is very limited in addressing mental states, because when we're talking about how we think, it's extremely complex and convoluted, and we need better ways of approaching that nuance. And Aristotelian logic, many-valued logic. Thank you, Steve. Aristotelian logic does misses nuance, and that is why I agreed with Steve. I agree with Steve on that point, but Matt blocked Steve for that disagreement, and I don't understand exactly why. Now, I know that Steve is a very controversial person. He is my friend. We are friends. I sometimes think people misread him or take him uncharitably, but I know that some people have issues with him, and I'm not gonna get into details. Steve is my friend. That's all I'm gonna say about this. I think he's a good person, and he's often misunderstood. I know sometimes he can be very abrasive, but let's be honest, I can be too. So the issue between Matt and Steve is between Matt and Steve. Now, I like both of them. I respect both of them. And in this matter, I agree with Steve McRae and not Matt Dillahunty, even though I agree with Matt Dillahunty on many other things. So this is this issue regarding the best way of dealing with the question of beliefs logically, in terms of logic. Now, excuse me. Now let's regard to the matter of semantics, which is one of the main things why I'm here anyway. Now, what I agree with Matt absolutely is that dictionaries or even academic papers regarding semantics, they are not prescriptive. They are descriptive. Now, regarding academia, of course, it's harder to make. It takes longer for people to change the usage of words in academia because it's by consensus among scholars. But when we're talking about colloquial use of language, people can say anything. People can use language however they like, and no one can say that certain use of language is right or wrong. But one thing that is important about this topic of atheism and agnosticism or other forms of theological non-cognitivism, for example, is that using atheism as an umbrella term is confusing because people have different beliefs regarding the God claim. So there is, and that is something that Matt also prefers. Matt doesn't like the lack-theism label. He doesn't like the description of lack of belief. He doesn't use it and he doesn't like it. He prefers non-theist. Now, non-theist as an umbrella term seems more appropriate. Or non-believer as an umbrella term seems more appropriate. You are claiming that you are not a theist. Now, being not a theist is different than being an atheist. At least that is how the term is traditionally coined. Now, for example, and this is something that Ozzy points out in his stream at Real Atheology, he points out that the term atheist was first used by Greeks and especially the Romans to designate everyone who didn't pay tribute to the Roman and Greek gods. So Christians were called atheists because they didn't pay their due tribute to the Greek gods, to the Roman gods. So it was not necessarily claiming people who don't believe in any gods. It were people who don't believe, or especially people who don't pay their tributes to the gods. That was where the word atheism was first started using, was first introduced in the vernacular. But over the years, it has changed, and one of the very important things that happened during the dominance of Catholicism and Christianity in Europe was the word atheist started to be used for those who neglected Christianity, those who rebelled against Christianity. And some philosophers were actually deists. They still had a belief in a God, but not rejected the God claim, but rejected Christianity. They were often referred to as atheists. Now, for example, during the 1800 presidential election in America, Thomas Jefferson was attacked as an atheist. Now, Thomas Jefferson was a deist, but he was called by the Federalists, by John Adams's political party during that campaign. He was attacked as a howling atheist, as an infidel. So it was a very politically charged label. It was referred to someone who wasn't a Christian and therefore was an immoral person, because you had the idea that to be a moral person you had to be a Christian. So it is a political label, and it was used in that sense, for example, to attack Thomas Jefferson in that particular time. That also came from the French Revolution. During the French Revolution, Jacobins had two important factions: the ones who believed in deism and the ones who were had absolutely no deity at all. It was Hebert with the cult of reason, and Maximilien Robespierre with the cult of the supreme being. Now, ultimately, Robespierre took the leadership of the Jacobins, etc., and it all went down as the way it did, and there was that fear of the non-believers, of the atheists, taking control of the state and imposing their terror and the lack of morals in society. So the issue that happened with atheism, and it became that politically charged label, a lot because of the French Revolution and the terror that came from the revolution against the aristocracy, against the clergy. So it created that fear of atheists right there. And that was intensified later during the rise of Marxism and during the Cold War. There was that strong association, especially in America, between communism and atheism. They were often used as, not exactly as synonyms, but atheism had a strong association with communism during the Cold War. So the word atheism became extremely negatively charged with that association with communism during the Cold War. So, especially in America, and I would say South America as well, because during that period, during the Cold War, most of the Cold War, we had military dictatorships that were openly anti-communist. So, during that period, atheism became such a political label, with such strong negative connotations, that started to have a lot of prejudice against people who use that label. So, the reason for organizations such as American Atheists, such as the Austin Atheist Community of Austin, is to use atheist as a political label. Now, that is something that is very, very clear by David Silverman, former chairman, president of the American Atheist organization. He's very clear that the reason for the use of atheist as an umbrella term is a political one. In his video, Atheist Know Thyself by Cosmic Skeptic, he makes that argument as well, that it is a political reason for using, not an epistemological, not a philosophical one, not even a semantic one. It is political. And there is nothing wrong with that. I can understand that. And I can understand, for example, also when Matt prefers to not use the label, the positive atheist position, when he's going to engage a debate where his position is not really to prove that God doesn't exist, but simply to show that the proposition that to believe in God is unreasonable, for example. So and I can understand why you use the soft atheist definition as a definition for atheism, but it's not the only one. And this is something that Ozzy especially is really bang on when he says the problem with doing that is that with using atheism in that sense is that you are losing nuance. You are losing the differences that exist between people who have different positions regarding the God claim. So if you make atheist an umbrella term, you don't know if the person simply is agnostic and has a, let's say, a suspend belief in the proposition. You don't know if they are positive atheists who claim that God doesn't exist. You don't know if they're a soft atheist who simply claim to have no belief in God. You don't know if they are a theological non-cognitivist who simply believe that the whole discussion is pointless, that it's a waste of time. You don't know if they are the type of agnostic who believes that the proposition is unknowable, for example, because there are also variations among agnosticism. You also don't know whether the person, there was another position here that I'm missing, atheist, you don't know if the person is an atheist. So there are so many variations of non-believers that to use the term atheists to embrace them all might make sense politically, but semantically and philosophically, it's problematic and you lose a lot of nuance. It's very similar in a way, I can make an analogy here, with my contention regarding the new definition or the new usage of the word transgender. It's something that I often find myself in discussions about it, because I also reject the usage of transgender as this umbrella term because it loses a lot of nuance. When someone now calls themselves, I am a trans person, you don't know anymore what they mean. So if you use atheist as an umbrella term, it's the same thing. If you say I'm an atheist, you don't know exactly what they mean anymore. So that's especially Ozzy's criticism to the usage of atheism in that sense. And I absolutely agree with Ozzy on that, and his criticism on this topic is absolutely bang on. Well, like almost everything that Ozzy says, if not everything that Ozzy says, is absolutely bang on. So that is kind of redundant to say that. But I think there were a few more things that I wanted to cover. I went to the historicity, like the problem of how the label is known historically. But yeah, the main thing that Steve is talking about an echo. I'm really sorry, I have no idea how to solve it. My skills regarding tech stuff and computer stuff is really limited. I apologize. I am a complete noob on that stuff. I know how to edit videos and that's it. But yeah, I apologize if there is an echo. I really apologize. What I was saying. Yes, Matt talks about clarity. Matt claims to care about clarity of language. That he wants language to be clear and easy to understand. And I believe that using atheism as he does, as this umbrella term, is confusing. And I think it's contradictory when Matt claims to care about clarity when he uses the term in that sense, and he makes comments such as agnostic is about knowledge and atheism is about belief, theism is about belief, when he fully knows that knowledge is a subset of belief. So ultimately it's all about beliefs. So I really have issues with Matt regarding this, and honestly, if Matt would do the same as Alex, as Cosmic Skeptic did, or as David Silverman does, and say, look, I am using the label because it's political, because there is a political advantage of doing that. I can understand, and I can understand Matt if Matt does that. But when Matt claims to care for clarity, claims to be worried about the best way to put it all semantically, I don't understand why he holds the position that he does, especially when Ozzy has so clearly make the arguments why this is not the best way to express the ideas of non-theism. Now, non-theist and non-believer as the umbrella term makes absolute sense and is very clear to describe the position of those who have no belief in God, whether they believe God don't exist or they simply suspend belief. But atheist is understood, and you can ask people what they understand as atheist, is understood as someone who believes God doesn't exist. So that is my criticism to Matt. I believe that he can use language in a clearer way. Matt is not the only one. Or he can just be honest about it and say, look, I'm using this because it is a political reason why I use this, because it makes us stronger politically as an advocacy for people getting rid of religion or whatever it is. his political ambitions. So that, I believe, covers everything. I think it's my position on this is clear. I am an atheist. I believe God doesn't exist, and I believe that the usage of atheist as an umbrella term is incorrect. The usage of agnostic atheist is absurd, since these are redundant terms. And anyway, I'm ending the stream. I've been blabbing for quite a while. Thank you all for watching. Thanks to everyone in the chat. You guys are fucking awesome. God, for a change, didn't show up. This was a longer stream. I'm doing longer streams now, so give him more time. He didn't show up, so I won the challenge once again. 33 to nil to me. Sorry, God didn't show. Well, I know why, because it doesn't exist. At least not the interventionist God anyway. Hi, I'm Sarah Michel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers, guys.